red light came on.
There
Is that
you
what it's
go.
supposed to do?
Yes, sir. That is
Okay.
correct. Okay, we are ready. So, um, whenever you're ready, ma'am, just
Okay.
I probably need to let me see. So, who will I focus on first? Then let's not go over here to you. And you're good. Actually, you guys are good. Excellent. Okay.
Just tell me.
I'm sorry.
Just tell me.
Okay. Since you're not Mike, I just want you to speak up a little louder.
Okay.
It's still picking you up,
Mhm.
but it's gonna pick him up a lot clearer because it's on him. So don't worry. You won't worry with that.
Is my mic on? Can you hear it okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, stand by. Three, two, one.
Today is June 10th, 2014. We are at the Urban League of San Diego. I am Jada Irving, and this is Mr. Bob Countryman.
Good morning.
What is your family history in San Diego?
Um, I arrived in San Diego around 1972 from San Francisco, California. I got transferred in my job. I'm a chemist. I worked with the Food and Drug Administration for several years before transferring to the Drug Enforcement Administration. It was while I was in San Francisco that I got promoted to a supervisory position in San Diego, and that's when I moved to San Diego. I've been here since.
How have you seen the ideas of opportunity develop over your lifetime?
Uh, a tremendous difference from when I was growing up until till now. Obviously, blacks at the time, because of their lack of education in certain areas, didn't have the opportunities that many others have. But obviously, that improved tremendously over the years. I can remember when I was in high school, very few blacks were going on to college. They were more or less going on to find a job to support their families. However, with the advent of the civil rights movement and people having more information about college and preparing themselves better for college, things began to change, and it changed tremendously. So until today, now we have quite a few African Americans going to college now, and it's not enough. We still need to improve that situation, but we're moving in the right direction.
How do you see the advancement of job opportunity, racial equality, housing availability, and access to education manifest themselves differently today than they did in the past?
Oh, it's a big difference. Uh, Prior to 1960, blacks could only live in certain areas of a city. I was raised in the projects of Hartford, Connecticut, and that's where most of the blacks lived at that time. The housing was cheap, but we didn't make a lot of money. So we had to move up the system by getting jobs, getting education. With that, things began to change. And as I had said earlier, uh, once education came into people's lives, the opportunities were a lot greater than they were previously.
How are you an active participant in the civil rights movement of the past and the present?
Oh boy. Okay. In the past, I was a student when it started. I was a student in high school and then a student at the University of Connecticut. We did our little marches. I was like a drum soldier. I wasn't at the forefront of the civil rights movement, but I was very aware of it and got involved in it with the marches and other things that we used to demonstrate our disenchantment with at the role that Americans had in America. That changed, of course, again with education, with involvement of people such as Martin Luther King. It became a lot easier to move forward, get that education, and have an impact on not only your lives but the lives of your children, and that was what was important.
What do you want people to remember most about African American conditions in America and in the civil rights movement?
Oh boy, I think that when we look back at the way things were and the way I was raised, because I'm from a family of 13 kids, things were rough because in those days, even with that number of kids, my mother still worked and taking care of a family out in the white neighborhood and then coming home and taking care of her family. Well, that's something that really impacts you in your life because that's something you don't want to see. Fortunately, with the number of kids that we had in our family, many of them started to go to work, and that relieved my mom having to do that. Once we started getting our own families, and of course she was retired by that time. We started seeing a big advancement in our lives and what we can do and what we can do for our children. So it made a big difference.
What impact has the Great Migration had on the civil rights movement, in your opinion?
Um, the Great Migration is something that really impacted my family in particular, and I have a huge story about it because my grandfather was born in 1854, and he married my grandmother sometime in the 1880s. They had nine children. Around the 1890s, when my father was born, 1899, his brother was born about 8 years prior to that. In the first part of 1900 is when the Great Migration started, because that's when blacks who were disenchanted with the way of life in the South began moving north. And my father and his brother moved north to look for jobs in different cities in the north. They went to Baltimore, they went to Washington, D.C., went to Philadelphia, and ended up in Hartford, Connecticut. Once they got a job in Hartford, Connecticut, started working, saving some money, then they sent for the rest of the family. That would include my mother at the time. I'm sorry, not my mother, my grandmother at the time, and then the other siblings in the family. One of the things that impacted that situation was the fact that they left behind a lot of their relatives who did not make that transition to the north. Consequently, we lost contact with those relatives for many, many years. And for the longest, I thought that there was only one set of countrymen in the whole country, and that was my family. There was a lawyer, a white lawyer in Hartford, Connecticut by that time that was named Countryman, but obviously we weren't related to him. So we went through high school, went through college, raised our families and everything. Not until it was later than that, it was 2009, that we find out that we had so many relatives in the South, and that came about by having a family reunion in Americus, Georgia. And that's where my mother was born. My father was born in Cardill, Georgia, and they're about 30 miles apart. But when we got down to the family reunion in Americus, Georgia, people just started coming out of the woodwork, and their names happened to be countrymen. And we started doing some research on Ancestry.com and other sources of information, and found out that my father had other relatives in the South that they left behind, and that his father had brothers in the South who had obviously had children, and these children grew up in the South. We grew up in the North, but there was no connection at that time. After the reunion in 2009, we met so many people that had the last name of Countryman, as well as other last names that you would expect. With, of course, the women changed their names when they got married, so we had other surnames that were part of the Countryman family, and our family grew by tens of thousands, it seems like, because there were so many people down there that had a connection with the Countryman family. And as far as the migration and the effect that it had, they found better jobs in the North, and they were able to get away from that plantation mentality that was so prevalent in the South, and that blacks had to get into, because that's the only jobs that they could find. Once we got up north, then the jobs started opening up in manufacturing and businesses and other things. And of course, it took years to happen, but it did happen that blacks made progress in the North, as well as those blacks in the South who began to realize that there were better things to do than picking cotton or working on a farm. And so the black migration had a tremendous impact on the lives of black. It made things a lot better, but obviously we still have a long way to go.
What was your earliest experience with the National Urban League?
Okay, is there any more that you can elaborate on? Give us any personal stories about the migration, but any family members that you remember or that was told to you. If it's not there,
I'm thinking, and I think the biggest impact was my grandfather had his siblings, and they're the ones that stayed. So the impact on them down here continued to be what it was at that time, whereas the impact on my father and his brothers, or let me back up. My father, his two brothers, who moved north, made a lot more progress in economically than the ones in the south. And that may have been a bigger impact. I don't know if that's that.
Any reason why they stayed? Everybody else is
Um,
leaving.
well, no, not everybody, because when you look at the numbers that were leaving, it was those people who had the subsistence to leave. Some of them just didn't have the money to leave. They didn't have the transportation to leave. They didn't have the wherewithal mentally to leave because they were used to staying with where they were. Sometimes when you get in a situation where you're down and out, that's all you know, and the adventure of moving to somewhere else just doesn't come within you. That has to be something that has to come within, and the person say, I don't like this anymore. I got to get out of here. And some people just didn't get that urge to leave. They were so entrenched in that society. I don't want to say that they were satisfied with their conditions, because nobody could be satisfied with those conditions, but they just didn't have the wherewithal to get up and say, I'm out of here. There's a better life somewhere, because the information kept coming back, although it was light. As you can imagine, the social media that we have today was nowhere near thought about back in those days, and so the communication was small, but some of it did get back. That's why they continued, because the migration went from 1910 to about 1930. Over those years, blacks continually started moving north. Now, of course, what we have now is that a lot of blacks now are moving back south because obviously things have changed. Cost of living is cheaper. Family history is still there. People want to get back to their roots, so to speak. So that's about it. I don't have any specific stories. I think what you're looking for, and we've had instances where my mother, for instance, witnessed the lynching of her cousin, which encouraged her family to move, because my mother moved to Connecticut about the same time my father did. Of course, they didn't know each other, even though they were born 30 miles apart. They didn't know each other until they got to Connecticut. And that's where they met each other, fell in love, and got married. So.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jada, go ahead. Continue. But I wanted him to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. I don't know if you picked any of that up, but.
Well, yeah, but see, this is formal. It's like
Yeah.
a formal interview,
Yeah.
and also it's informal.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
collecting information. She's a historian,
Mm-hmm.
and so any bits of information
Yeah.
that maybe she don't get out, I'll ask her.
There's a book out, and I saw it yesterday. I apologize, I can't remember the name of it, on the black migration, on the great, they call it the Great Migration, but it's the black migration, and a tremendous story on it. They've never really done a movie on that, and that would be a tremendous, somebody like Tyler Perry or somebody like that should get on that and do a movie on that, because it would be a fantastic story. Whether it sells or not, that's another story.
I think you see, and this is good.
Yeah.
I think that because the fact that you have a personal account of that.
Hold on, James.
You have a personal account of that. I think a movie about your family would be great.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I mean, that would be
I don't know
excellent.
about
I mean, there may be others that have more information, but
Yeah.
we don't know them.
Yeah,
Right?
and very similar information, or even more dynamic too.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
yeah. Hey James, I'm still in the interview. I'll see you at the golf course. Okay, all right, we'll see you there. One of my golf buddies just let me know he's gonna be there.
Well, let's see. We might, that might, that we may be talking talking some future stuff here.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is very good. I'm sorry, Jada. Continue, ma'am.
How many
What
more
is-
we got?
Oh, just three.
Okay.
What is your earliest experience with the National Urban League?
Back in Connecticut, I knew some people that were involved in the Urban League. I wasn't involved in the Urban League myself. I was in college at the time. Once I got out of college, I was involved somewhat with the NAACP. Then I started moving around. I left Connecticut, moving to Boston From Boston, I moved to Los Angeles, San Diego, Los Angeles to San Francisco, then to San Diego. When I got here, I met some people with the Urban League. I was never that much involved in the Urban League, but obviously I sympathized with the work that they were doing because they were doing a tremendous amount of it when I was down there. One of the coordinators of the Urban League was a news broadcaster here in San Diego, and then became a head of the Urban League. And I'm trying to remember his name, Herb Cawthorn. Herb Cawthorn was a real good friend of mine. And when he left the television to become the head of the Urban League, that was a big push for him. And Urban League has done a great job here in San Diego and continue to do so.
Okay, hold 1 second, please.
Yeah, I couldn't remember Herb's name. Is
I'm-
Herb still in town? I haven't seen
I
him.
was going to ask you because I'm trying to find him.
No,
I really want to talk to
Yeah,
him because
yeah, because Herb he was big in San Diego. Be good to find Herb. Herb is quite a guy.
Okay, continue, please.
Have you used your opportunities and mentoring to share relevant stories about civil rights with young men?
Oh, absolutely. My first involvement with mentoring, I should say, was when I was working with the Drug Enforcement Administration as a supervisor. During the time that I worked for the federal government in the laboratory, there were very few blacks that were hired in the laboratory. Now, whether that was because there were very few that were available or that they weren't getting hired, that remains to be seen. But once I became a supervisor in San Diego, it was my aim to make sure that I got more African American chemists involved in the laboratory system, particularly the laboratory that I was working in. And I was in charge of recruitment, so I went out looking for African Americans, and I'm happy to say that during the time that I was a supervisor at the Southwest Laboratory, that I hired some 7 to 8 black chemists there, and that was more chemists than they had in the whole laboratory system. I'm also happy to say that several of those chemists that I hired are now laboratory directors at 3 or 4 laboratories in the system throughout, so I'm very, very proud of that. The other programs that I've worked with is the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers called NOBUCHE. I was the president of the San Diego NOBUCHE chapter for many years, and we set up a Science Bowl competition where African Americans could come in and participate in the National Science Bowl. Prior to that, there were very few African Americans participating in the sciences because that's something that they had not traditionally gone into for a vocation. We brought in a lot of young people, prepared them for the Science Bowl competition, took them on trips to different cities where the competition was being held. And over the years, we've got quite a few kids that decided to go into science because of that, and we're very proud of that. Right now, I'm working with the Sigma Pi Phi fraternity through the Alpha Pi Boule chapter here in San Diego, and we have a program called Boys to Men. We started that about 6 years ago. We get kids in the starting in the 6th grade and up. We bring them through our program. We take them to different jobs that are being held by our professionals, letting them see what different opportunities are available to them. And we've done at Kaiser Hospital, we took the kids to see how an autopsy is done. We have a program with the lawyers that are in our organization through a mock trial. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to do a mock trial this month where the kids take on different roles that happen when you try a case. And they become the judge, they become a prosecuting attorney, they become a defense attorney, and they learn how a trial is run. And we usually do it twice so that the kids can change roles to see how it is on the other side. And they get a lot out of it, and we really enjoy doing it.
I was reading about your Sigma Phi Phi fraternity and the 1998 boycott of the meeting in San Diego as a result of the California 1995 outlaw of affirmative action. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I remember that well because I was the meeting planner within our organization to get the hotel for that meeting. And we got the Marriott Hotel, and when the California passed that law about affirmative action, we were very upset about it. And the national organization had said that we would not take our meeting to a city that had such a law. So we had to go into the hotel sit down with the hotel people and let them know how we felt, irrespective of what the cost would be for us. We were not going to bring the meeting to San Diego, and that's what happened. So we did not have it there. Now, obviously, things have changed, and we want to get the meeting back here in San Diego if we can. So we're looking forward to it if later in years down the line we can get the meeting back here in San Diego. But that particular time, we took it out of San Diego, we took it to Seattle, Washington, and had a great meeting there. And but that was our impact on the result of that law being passed here in California. We felt good about it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about civil rights and the Great Migration?
Whoa, there's a lot of different stories I can come up with about the Great Migration, especially because that's something that is dear to my heart. I went did a lot of research in the history of African Americans in the South and how they made that migration to the North. And there's a lot to learn about it, and I'm still learning, especially about my particular family, because I found out a lot about the surnames in my family and how to identify who they were, where they're now, and we're still doing that work. And we've built a tremendous resource of identifying those people who are part of the Countryman family, and we're continuing to do that. So it's still working out for me.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
okay, I have one other question I'd like to ask. What is it that you believe that our young people need to know today, other than the history, that they need to know about race relations? In other words, are we better off now? You've heard people say this, and you've probably been asked this question before now. Are things better than they were?
Okay, you ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
ready. Go.
In my opinion, there is no doubt that we are better off than we were before. The opportunities are out there. The opportunities for those people who take advantage of them are out there tremendously. Education is something that's you have to be self-motivated with. We talk to a lot of kids. We try to motivate them, but it comes from within. And kids have to understand that they need to go learn, learn, learn by going to school, reading, specifically reading. That's something that not enough African Americans do, is read, and they need to continue to do that. Find out just where they want to go to school, what they want to go into, look at all kinds of professions that's out there, and decide what they want to do. We do a lot in our program to talk to kids about different professions. We don't try to guide them to any one. What we try to guide them is to how they prepare for those professions or for any professional profession that they want to go into. It's very important to us that kids understand that from an early age, you got to work hard, you got to read, you got to put the time in. One of the things that is prevalent in African American males that we work with is that you ask them what they want to be. They want to be a basketball player, want to be a football player. Well, we don't discourage them from doing that. What we do is encourage them to understand that that should not be a one-line determination to be a football player or basketball player. They need to have something along with that as a backup. And although we call it a backup, for me, it's the first choice. And to me, sports is a backup because it only lasts for a short time. So we try to get the kids to understand that you get out there, you read, you learn, you study, you get your education, you build up your resume, so that when you apply for a job, people will look at you not as a black individual looking for a job, but as an individual looking for a job who has the credentials to do that job. And once we start understanding that that's what it's all about, they'll understand that the opportunities are there. No longer is the color of your skin going to be a hindrance to your being hired. It's going to be your character, your ability to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well, and not to settle for mediocre things, but to make sure that if you do something, you do the best of your ability.
Lovely, beautiful. I know there's more. I wish we had time to get it, but I tell you, that's excellent, sir.